So here's a question for you. Would you benefit from ongoing support to improve your sales conversations and ultimately close more business? The Sales Maven Society offers you daily support for your urgent sales questions, an extensive library of bite-sized trainings to hone your selling skills, and monthly live coaching calls where you receive individualized coaching from me specific to your business so that you're able to remove any bottlenecks in your sales process. This is the most robust sales coaching program around for an incredible value of only $147 a month. And you can join now for your first month for only $47. You get access to absolutely everything, including the live coaching calls with me. Come check it out and see if this is the place for you to really elevate your business to the next level. You can do this by going to yoursalesmaven.com/society, hit the join now button. And then when it takes you to that page, enter this code, the number 4, the number 7, and the word trial, TRIAL. So 47 trial, all one word, and you'll be a member. I can't wait to see you in there. Now, here's the podcast.
Do sales conversations make you feel awkward or pushy? It's time to ditch the outdated salesy strategies. Your guide, Nikki will show you how to combine kindness with selling skills to meet your prospects where they are, and in the process, how to up-level your influence and income. Learn how to earn business easily and effortlessly. Here's Nikki.
Welcome, and thank you for listening to the Sales Maven Show. I'm Nikki Rausch. I am your sales maven here to offer you tips, techniques, and strategies to master your sales conversations. Today's episode is a solo episode. It's just you and me here chatting. And the topic that we're going to dig into today is how to be more confident under pressure. So I was having a conversation earlier today with a client, and this particular client has really stretched themselves outside of their comfort zone. You may find yourself in these situations from time to time. And this particular client, the big stretch was doing a pretty significant change to their pricing, which of course resulted in an increase in price for her clientele. And she was really nervous about making this change. We worked on it for a while to get her comfortable, and she made the change as of the first of the month. And there has been a little bit of pushback. So when I met with her today, I was checking in to say, like, how have the conversations gone? What have you said in the situations where people have pushed back a little bit or been surprised about the new pricing? And it was during that conversation that I shared with her a story and a technique that I use when I find myself in uncomfortable situations, or those situations that I feel like I'm under pressure right now. So I thought I'd record this episode in case this is something that you are dealing with or something you can keep in your back pocket to refer to later. And I don't think I have shared this story on the podcast before. So this might be a brand new story for many of the listeners, I'm hoping. A few of my clients may have heard me share this story before, but it's been a while. So I thought I would bring it back. Now, before I do this, I want to say that the reason it is so important for you to have some kind of a strategy in situations where you feel under pressure is the more confident you can show up, the more resilient you will be in those situations. You may have heard me talk about this before. You know, my job always is to try to be like a swan. I don't know if you've heard me tell this story. Like, you got to be the swan sometimes. And the thing about a swan is a swan like glides across the top of the water. It's majestic. It looks beautiful. It's like calm, cool, and collected. But underneath, if that swan is really gliding quickly across the water, that swan's feet are paddling like heck, right? So often I talk about being the swan, and I apply this to my own life and business as well, because there will be times where you encounter things that feel like high pressure situations and you'll feel uncomfortable. So I'm going to share an NLP technique with you and share the story behind it. But the idea here, I went and found a quote around this. I love this quote, so we'll see if you like it too. And this is from Eleanor Roosevelt. It says, "Do one thing every day that scares you. Those small things that make us uncomfortable help us build courage to do the work that we do." So the technique that I'm going to share with you is a fairly small technique. And it's something that you can take on and you can practice and you can play with as much as you want until it becomes second nature, until you don't really need to play anymore. You just show up as the confident version of yourself in situations where you feel under pressure. Okay, so this, I mentioned, what I'm going to share with you comes from my background in NLP. It's a technique that's known as walking in moccasins. That's the name of the practice that we learned in my NLP class many, many years ago. And I remember the teacher saying, I'm going to teach you guys a guided process or a process that's known as walking in moccasins. And she made us get in this big circle. So everybody was standing in a circle. And she said, "I'm going to pair you up with the person that is least like you." And so I'm instantly nervous. And all I can think is, please don't pair me with Jacob. Please don't pair me with Jacob. Please don't pair me with Jacob. And she said, "Nikki, I'm going to pair you with," you guessed it, Jacob. And I was like, oh no, terrible. Now, here's the thing. Jacob he was the most different from me in class. This was many years ago. I was still working on building my own communication skills. As a matter of fact, this was it was in the first couple weeks of my first practitioner's training in NLP. So I really had only been exposed to the people in the class for a few days because we used to go 2 days. Like we would do a Saturday and Sunday class once a month. So I'd only probably been around these people maybe 4 or 5 days. And there was one person in the class, Jacob, and I'm actually using his real name because, well, you maybe it'll make sense to you at the end, but Jacob had such a different style than me. He was incredibly confident. He was incredibly outspoken. He was a little bit argumentative at times, in my opinion. And it turns out he was a lawyer. Not surprising. He had he was one of those people that, the teacher would teach something and he would have a lot of questions and he would push back and he would challenge her a lot. I'm not usually the student in the room that challenges the teacher. I am a rule follower by nature. And that's more comfortable for me. And so I found him a little abrasive at first. And so that was the reason I didn't want to be paired up with Jacob. He was quite a bit older than I was. So I think when I started studying in my NLP class, I was in my early to mid 30s. And again, he was older. He was very well educated. Very accomplished man. And he was probably in his 60s, I would think at the time. Okay. So Jacob, get paired with Jacob. Now, the process of the NLP process, walking in moccasins, here was the assignment. We were to essentially follow behind this person, 2 steps behind them for a pretty significant period of time. And we were to take on their mannerisms, take on just the way they walked, the way they moved, the way they tilted their head, any and everything that made this person themselves, we were to essentially mimic, because this kind of goes back to the brain and the way that neurons are firing in your brain. When you do something different, when you move in a different way, it causes a new neuro connection in your brain. So it feels really uncomfortable. Think about, for instance, if you've ever tried to brush your teeth with a different hand at night, like you probably have, whether you're left-handed or right-handed. I'm left-handed. So I brush my teeth with my left hand. If I try to brush my teeth with my right hand, it feels a little uncomfortable. So trying to walk like somebody and take on their mannerisms, it's kind of that same experience of trying to brush your teeth with a different hand, right? Or eat your meals with a different hand, or do any of the things that you normally do. So follow around Jacob for quite a period of time. And what happens is, with neurons firing in your brain, different connections are happening in your brain, and you start to actually think differently and behave differently. Now, poor Jacob, he also was paired with me. So after we did the experience of me following him, he then had to follow me. And then we come back together and we would talk about what the experience was like of having to, essentially like be a different person. If you think about like when you dress up for Halloween, or, if you wear something you've never worn before, sometimes you act a little different, you walk a little different. It's kind of the same concept. And when we talked about it, again, Jacob being quite outspoken and very direct in his approach, he shared he didn't like walking behind me. He felt small and timid at times. And I had to share with him that I felt powerful and aggressive and really tall. Jacob was very tall. I don't know, definitely over 6'3". I can't remember exactly, but he was a very tall man. And I could feel myself just feeling a little different. I feel like I was standing taller. I just felt different when I took on this kind of Jacob persona. And we did some other things in class and sat down and talked about it. Now, I think I mentioned at the beginning, I was like, please don't pair me with Jacob. Like, I don't want to really even spend time around this guy. Well, after this experience, Jacob and I actually became pretty good friends, and we went through all of our NLP training together on through masters. And when we got to pick partners, Jacob and I often picked partnering with each other, because it turns out when you can really understand another person, the way they move, the way they talk, and you start to think in similar ways to the way they think, they're really easy to be around. Now, here's why I'm sharing this story with you, is because many times over the last, what has it been, 15 years, I have channeled Jacob in situations where I felt like I needed to be more authoritative, I needed to be more direct, I needed to be more aggressive in situations, because it's not my natural style. I like to be liked. I love to be loved. I don't want people to be uncomfortable and upset with me. But there are times where I have needed to stand up for myself, or I've needed to say things a little bit more direct to somebody. They weren't getting it the first time. And I have been able to channel Jacob, and it has been incredibly helpful, to the point now where I rarely even think about channeling Jacob, because I now know what it feels like in my body to feel tall and aggressive and direct. And so I don't have to channel him anymore. So what I was sharing with my client this morning was to find somebody that she admires, who is able to be really resilient in these uncomfortable conversations that she was going to have with people about pricing. And we're going to meet again next month, to follow up to see how it's going. And I said, well, pick somebody that you think they would be really good in these situations. Now, I don't necessarily mean you need to follow them around like I did and walk in there. I think I mentioned this technique is called walking in moccasins. I don't actually know why it's called that, but the whole saying of like, you walk a mile in someone else's shoes. I think it's maybe based on that. So the idea, though, is for you to take on a persona in an uncomfortable situation. When you feel under pressure, who can you channel? If you really think about it and go, how would this person behave? What would their demeanor be? What would their hand gestures be? What would their facial expressions be? What would their voice quality be? All of these things that you can then implement in your own situation and see what the results are. Now, at some point, you start to learn and it becomes your thing. So it's no longer this other person's thing, it's your thing in that situation. And you will be able to be more confident in situations that feel like high pressure. And some of it's because, once we're doing something for the first time or having an uncomfortable conversation, of course, it's super scary. But after you get used to having uncomfortable situations, they're no longer uncomfortable situations or conversations because you get better at it. So, in case this is helpful, I wanted to share it with you today for you to start channeling your own person. Now, I wish I had a picture of Jacob. I wish I had a video of Jacob to share. He's somebody I've lost touch with him actually, because it's been so many years, but I will say I can so clearly see him in my mind. And I cannot tell you how many times, and I have reached out to him over the years and shared times where I was like, I channeled my inner Jacob today, and here's what happened. So find your person. And it can be a different person in different situations, in different like high pressure situations. Who do you know that would be the most resilient here? Now, if you've listened to the podcast for a while, you know that I do the Mastering Excellence series. And in there, if you've heard any of those, you might remember that some of my first questions to somebody in a Mastering Excellence series, when I'm talking about what is it that makes them, like what do I have? I think the first question I ask is, if I were to stand in for you for a day, how would I have to think, or what would I have to do? This is very much comes from this walking in moccasins process. And then I ask sometimes, what specifically would I have to do to behave like you? Now, you could actually maybe ask the person you admire and see if they're willing to share their answer. But you can also, in the moment, make up your own version of what do you think they would do or say. From what you know about them, do your best so that you can increase your own confidence in these high pressure situations so you feel more resilient. It's all about being the best version of yourself in that moment. And again, the more you channel somebody like this, the more you start to understand, how do you have to move? How do you have to behave? What do you do with your voice? All these things come forward and makes it easier for you the next time, gets easier the next time after that, and on and on and on. Okay. I hope this was helpful. I hope you're able to implement some version, and find your person and increase your confidence in any of these situations. So whether it is a work situation, a personal situation, any of those things that make you feel a little bit outside of your comfort zone, channel somebody and see what happens. I'd love to hear who's the person you're going to channel and what is the situation that you will apply this person's behaviors, this person's cadence to. If you're willing to share, please reach out to me. You can reach out to me through social media. I tend to hang out on Instagram. There's also LinkedIn. You can find me there. All of this is in the show notes. Of course, you can just email me, Nikki@yoursalesmaven.com. Any way that you're willing to share, I would be delighted to hear from you. And if you know somebody who needs to hear this episode, if they're finding themselves in uncomfortable or high pressure situations, would you please be willing to share? And last thing, my last ask is, if you have found value in this podcast, in any of the episodes, and you haven't yet offered your rating and review, would you do that now? I would be so grateful. Thank you for being here. I wish you continued success in all that you're doing. Have a great rest of your day. Take care.
Thanks for listening to Sales Maven. Visit us online at yoursalesmaven.com/maven for more resources to boost your confidence and skills.
Are you ready to increase your confidence in your sales conversations? I have a gift for you that is going to show you exactly how to do that. It is my Closing the Sale ebook. It's all about leveling up your confidence, giving you language to use, how to seamlessly move somebody through the sales process. And you can get it right now by going to yoursalesmaven.com/Maven. Go grab it.